Hello there, I'm speaking today from our very dried out wildlife pond. This is a pond that Fabrizio dug during the first lockdown with the children, and it is supposed to be a small pond for amphibians, really. And you might think that the pond drying out is a disaster, but actually for the amphibian life, it's not the end of the world, because if you have a small pond like this, you will have occasional visiting ducks, and sooner or later the ducks will arrive with fish eggs on their feet, and the fish eggs will hatch and turn into monstrous predators that will eat the baby frogs and the baby newts. And this is a hive of activity for newts, this pond. So, one, not a bad thing, because if there were any fish, not anymore. Any newts and frogs who live here will have said, ew, this is a bit dry and nasty. Obviously not in that voice necessarily. And they will have bumbled off, and they will be tucked under a log or behind a stone or in some compost, and they will be sort of in suspended animation until the wet weather comes again. So don't worry about the frogs and the newts. So they'll all be in that pile of logs that Fabrizio is focusing on. What else do we have that's a good thing going on here? Well, having it dry means that Fabrizio can get into the pond and he can cut back, for example, the galangal, which is at the back, this tall person. Am I allowed to tread on him?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
That's sweet galangal, and it takes over, and also it just needs its vigour reducing.
This is sweet galangal, and if we leave it without cutting it back, it could take over a small pond like this. And so by cutting it hard back, we'll reduce the vigour a bit, and it'll stay being a lovely place for the dragonflies to emerge, for example, when the time comes, without overwhelming the pond.
Oh, look, I can see some, if you stand back a moment, I can just, look, there's some dead dragonflies, but are they dead dragonflies, or are they're just larvae? I think they're the exoskeleton of the larvae, I'm pointing at the moment, they're probably southern hawkers or something like that, I don't know. But they've all flown away. Okay, their eggs might have died, I don't know, or they might survive in the wet mud there. You can definitely see some of the water snails estivating.
Yes, look.
They'll be okay. They'll just stay in a sort of torpor until it rains. But there'll be lots of other things, lots of algae, lots of microorganisms living in that mud, which will reinvigorate the pond when the rains come.
That's fantastic. So then around the pond, because this is quite wet ground, we do have lots and lots of lovely wildflowers. So here we have the purple loosestrife, which the bees love. And behind them we have, look, there's a convenient bee. What's that spiky thing? I'm having a brain dead moment, Fabrizio.
The teasel?
The teasel, which the goldfinches will feast on in the winter. We have the galangal here, and this yellow person that I call egg and bacon. What would you call that, Fabrizio?
Well, it's bird's foot trefoil, but it's got this one's got a hollow stem. This is greater.
Okay, this is greater bird's foot trefoil. I'll say that again. Greater bird's foot trefoil.
Really loved by the common blue butterfly.
It's loved by the common blue butterfly, and you can tell that it's the greater version because if you snap it off, it's got a hollow stem. And then over here at the back, we've got some self-sown wild carrot, Dorcas carota. And altogether, this is a very nice little wildlife-friendly patch. Having a pile of logs on the edge there gives you a place where the newts and the frogs can go and suspend their animation. And having a week or two of dry will not kill the pond. So don't worry about it too much if your pond is dry. I have to say, the other thing, I'm standing here And the scent of mint is absolutely delicious because there is mint growing in this pond, and I keep bruising it as I step over it. There's another exciting visitor here. On the pile of logs, which we put there to give shelter, is we have this unexpected visitor. It's a bracket fungus. And if I show you my finger for scale, you'll see just how big it is. Look at that, it's enormous. And the lovely thing about having any kind of piles of rotting material is it will be very, very slowly taken back into the soil, grown upon, predated upon, used as somewhere to live. And having the bracket fungus is just an example of how slowly the mycorrhiza in our soil recycles everything here. Look, these are honeybees. Can you see them on the purple loosestrife? That's a honeybee. You can always tell a honeybee because they're a little bit smaller than bumblebees, a bit more defined. Oh, look, here's Teacake. Teacake, hello. As you can see, Fabrizio here has begun mowing the meadow. He's mown the right-hand side, and the left-hand side is going to be next. He mows very slowly. He takes all his clippings away and puts them in a deep heap at the lowest point of the farm so that all the goodness from the rotting down grass doesn't come and increase the nutrition of the soil, so that our wildflower meadows keep being good. And here, if you look back, you will see various clips of the wildflower meadow when it's looking more colourful. And we have lots and lots and lots of wild orchids. So Fabrizio takes the wild orchid stems when they're going to seed and hangs them up so that they can set their seed through the winter as they get blown around. It works really nicely. And this is the yellow rattle, which has gone to seed. Do you see if I go, I don't know if it's going to work. There are grasshoppers in here. But you must leave your yellow rattle seed to set because it is an annual and it grows from fresh seed every year. So one of the reasons you don't cut your meadow too early is because the yellow rattle seed won't be mature. But we've had this incredibly hot patch, so this is fine and ready for clipping. And then hopefully we'll have more yellow rattle next year. We have purple loosestrife growing all over the farm. It does like a dampish place, but despite the fact that we are in a drought and it is really, really dry, it's really flourishing behind me in the shade of this hedge. We are thick clay, and it is very dry, but the purple loosestrife behind me doesn't mind so long as it can get his feet right down so it doesn't dry out. And it is, well, I'm 5'2". It's quite tall. You don't have to have a pond to have wild carrot either. Here is another wild patch on a heap of spoil from some building works we did years ago, and it's a much drier patch than elsewhere. And the wild carrot loves it here. And I will be coming along, leave some to seed itself, and I will be helping myself to some of these beautiful seed heads for my autumn creations and winter work. Common Farm Flowers is a 7-acre patch, and it's about half cultivated and half wild. And we keep it wild on purpose because then there is somewhere for a whole food chain to exist. Food chains start at the bottom with small insects and the even smaller bacteria and so on that they eat, and grow up to large mammals like us. And without the environment where the small insects can flourish, as here, this little corner patch, where the thistledown is flying away happily, then there is nothing for the larger predators to eat. You've got to start small with wilding, and that's what we've done here in small patches all around the garden. It goes like this: wild, Teacake, cut flower patch. Teasels also don't have to grow next to ponds, and they can make wonderful statuesque plants. Again, I'm 5'2". I'd say these were about 8 foot high and were grown from seed by a neighbour, Anne, who always brings us spare teasel plants when she has them in the spring, and we pop them in and this sort of thing happens. 8 foot. I hate using them in floristry because they're so scratchy. They shred my skin. So I leave them all for the goldfinches and all their friends to eat the seed through the winter and flourish as a result. So I hope you've enjoyed this little clip about how not to panic about the wild in a hot patch. If any of the information we've given you has been useful, then please do subscribe to the channel, press the bell icon, and we'll tell you when we've got more clips coming up. And you can always buy me a coffee. The link is in all the blurbs to all the clips. The coffees just reassure me that the clips are interesting and that you'd like more. Thanks very much, and I'll see you soon. Bye from hairy, wild Somerset.